Greetings and welcome to episode number 11 of the Classical Guitar Composers Podcast. As always, I am your host, Chris Hales, and I'm very glad to have you joining me today on this real crisp October afternoon. It's my absolute favorite time of year, for several reasons, but one just being the weather, although it's a little cold for October today. I'm glad I at least got in one last good round of disc golf, because I don't know if I'm going to get any more for a while. It's getting cold early this year. But I'm very glad to be with you today. I took the day off work. I got to use some time off and have a chance to finally record the previously promised Halloween episode. Are you scared? Don't worry. We'll walk through this together. You might hear some life happening in the background. It's impossible for me to get a quiet house anymore. There's just no time where nobody's home. So, if you hear life happening in the background, well, I've just come to accept that that's how it is, and hopefully it won't infiltrate too much into the microphone. Yeah, I'm also trying a new microphone cable. This one I've been using for like 20 years finally crapped out on me, and I had this other one hanging there that I'd never opened, and it's still banded together, and it says value microphone. Somebody gave me this. Hopefully it works good. Seems to be working at the moment. But that makes me a little nervous. Value microphone cable. All right. I've got a fresh pitcher of iced tea. I just poured myself a glass. I am ready to go. I'm excited about this episode. I wonder if I could get Pure Leaf or Lipton or somebody to sponsor me. Be like, hey, I have a podcast with like dozens of listeners, and it's a guitar podcast, but I talk about iced tea a lot. Think they'd sponsor me? I don't know. That'd be nice. Oh my gosh. Okay, you know what? I just discovered. I'm cutting it out, but there's been a break here in the podcast, so it wasn't my microphone cable. I got this new phone, and it was like, it was messing with the microphone. So that was the problem. I can go back to my 20-year-old cable. Okay, but now the phone's off, so that won't be a problem. Anyway, yeah, I wonder if I could get an iced tea company to sponsor me. Why am I so obsessed with iced tea? Well, the easiest answer would be I'm obsessed with everything. I'm somebody who doesn't... I don't dabble with things. If you could sum up my life in one sentence, it would be not even a sentence, just a phrase. Addicted to everything. That would describe me perfectly. And I probably drink way too much iced tea and too much coffee, but, I don't know. No cigarettes anymore. I find myself just very habitual, and if there's something I like a lot of it. It's very helpful for playing guitar, because I'm also addicted to playing guitar. I seriously can't stop. But yeah. I don't drink alcohol, not because I don't like alcohol. It's quite the opposite, actually. I like it too much, and so I just stick to iced tea. And so, I'm gonna have an iced tea. You have yourself whatever makes you happy, and let's enjoy this together. But I wonder if I could get an iced tea sponsorship. I don't know. I don't smoke cigarettes either anymore, but another former habit that's kind of gone away. So I haven't smoked cigarettes in over, it's been 12 years since I quit smoking. It's been over 12 years. But I still really like the smell of cigarettes. Like, I like if a group of people are standing outside smoking, I'll just go talk to them. But I don't like the smell of it like on your clothes and stuff, but yeah, I just like the smell of a burning cigarette. But nowadays everybody vapes, and the vapes smell disgusting. I hate it. And so I'm upset. I know you're all trying to be healthier, but man, those vapes stink. It's terrible. Somebody once was in my house and they just started vaping, and I was like, "What are you doing?" They're like, "Oh, sorry." Get out of here with that. Yeah. I don't like the vaping. Anyway, back to the show. Okay, so here we are in October. I told you earlier this year I was going to do a Halloween episode. It's my absolute favorite time of the year. I just like the weather. I like the look. In Utah, we have beautiful falls. Beautiful falls is what I'm trying to say. And you know me, I like scary things. I've liked creepy things ever since I was a little kid. It's just a fascination that I do not remember acquiring. I'm pretty sure I was born with it. And so I've always naturally been drawn to horror movies. I've seen quite a few. I tend to like horror movies from the 70s and 80s the most. There's some real good ones from the other decades, but the bulk of them for me come from that time. I think the best slasher movie is Halloween. I think that's one of the best horror movies ever made. But as a series of movies, I like the Friday the 13th better, even though it's kind of a ripoff. I think the Friday the 13th are much better, and there's a point when each series falls off a cliff and the movies just get terrible. But there's like the first two Halloweens are really good, and then 3 is just kind of something different that has nothing to do with the first two, and then after that they're pretty bad. But I really liked the most recent one, where they kind of scrapped all the sequels and just started over. With Friday the 13th, I think you've got a nice solid first 4 movies, and then you've got like Freddy versus Jason. I think is really good. I think the best horror movie, actually, really my favorite movie of all time, is John Carpenter's The Thing. Jeez, I can't talk today. John Carpenter's The Thing, the one with Kurt Russell. Oh my gosh, that movie is so good. If I was to recommend one horror movie, that's it. If you can handle horror, I think that's the best one. I've already made all my kids watch it, and they'll live. Yeah, you know what a really good one is? If you're not sure about it, but you want to watch a scary movie, but you don't know where to start, but you're listening to this podcast, I recommend a movie called The Changeling. It's not that movie with Angelina Jolie that came out whenever, I don't know, like 10 years ago or something. It's nothing to do with that. It's from like 1980. I can't remember the guy who did it, but it's about a composer living in a haunted house. Does that not intrigue you? It's really good. There's an old 70s movie called Suspiria. That's like it takes place at this ballet school, I think in Germany. I can't remember for sure. Suspiria is pretty cool. It's got some cool music, and there was a remake made of that. I really liked the remake. I think it is one of the best remakes. Well, I mean, it's not John Carpenter's The Thing. I guess that's the best remake, but I think most remakes are stupid, and that's kind of like all that they're doing these days. It's like they've run out of ideas and they keep remaking good movies crappy. I really liked the remake of Suspiria because they really took the idea and they kept like all the kind of iconic things from the first movie, but did something different. That movie's a little intense. It's a pretty hard R. So if it's proceed with caution if you're gonna take a look at that. I'm not here to advertise movies. I'm just talking. about things I like, I guess. I bring this up though because a lot of horror movies, they have some pretty cool music that's jarring, creepy. A lot of them don't, but I love the idea. And I've actually written some like horror music, but horror and classical guitar really don't. I haven't been able to find a scary sounding classical guitar. You know what I mean? Like you get a tinkly out of tune piano, it's just automatically creepy, you know, in a big house. But guitars just aren't that scary. I guess like if you record into like a tape recorder with lots of hiss and stuff and just make it sound old and play some kind of slow waltz or something, that could be a little creepy, but it's just not an instrument that lends itself to being scary, I don't think. So anyway, I've wanted to write more horror music, but these days I really only compose for guitar. I've just kind of, I used to compose like for all kinds of things. I liked to just practice and try to get more familiar with and better at composing for like, I've done a lot of orchestral stuff and like little like wind combos, but anymore I just would rather compose guitar pieces. So I mentioned, I think in a previous episode, that I had to go to Prague for work this year, and while I was there, just kind of with the historical buildings and the historical significance to classical music there, I got really inspired to start composing again, because I really hadn't for a while. And so like on the plane on the way home, I actually started just trying to work out some ideas in my head. I mean, it's not like I can sit and compose in my head. I'm not going to pretend like I'm like that, but I can kind of get ideas going and sometimes like map out a piece, and then go home and then get on the guitar and really try to flesh out that idea. And so I started doing that on the plane, and I was going to write a guitar concerto, and I started it when I got home. I've thought about writing a guitar concerto like for years, right? We probably all have. And I actually came home, started working on it vigorously for a while, and in I think it was like July, maybe it was June, I was my family and we went down to Arches National Park, and we were hiking, and I got this idea into my head about doing that creepy music I've been wanting to do on guitar, and I was like, maybe there's a way. And so I just started working out this idea in my head when we were hiking, and we came home, and I immediately started working on it and felt like I really had something going. And so I made a goal to finish it and have it recorded by October so that I could do a Halloween themed podcast. And so here we are. I'm very excited to share it with you, and I'm also ready to move on. I don't know, I'm wondering if you guys are like this. When I'm composing, it's all I do. I stop practicing like the pieces I'm working on. It just kind of takes over my guitar life for a while. And so ever since June or July or whenever that was, like this new it's a suite. This suite has been my life. I had to get it composed, and I had to get it into my fingers and then recorded. And so I'm really excited to share it with you, but I'm excited to just, I've got some pieces I want to work on, so I want to take on some new pieces, move on from that stinking Etude number 2 at Villalobos, and work on a new one. I'm ready to just move on. So I am very excited to share this piece with you. So let me tell you about this piece and play it for you. Okay, so this is my second guitar suite, the first being the American Suite. This one is very different. So the American Suite is more in the vein of like the Villalobos Brazilian Suite, in that it's kind of really like there's no unifying key. In fact, the American Suite was going to be just a set of preludes, was my original idea, just individual pieces. The reason I ended up kind of making it a suite was because there was some connecting themes, and if you're familiar with it, the last movement ends up having a reprise of part of the first movement. There's a lot. I started to try to use some connecting ideas. It just sort of developed into a suite, and it's more of a suite in that sense. It's closer to something like the Villa-Lobos Brazilian suite rather than like a Bach suite, which is like a series of dance movements. And anyway, this suite is more in the vein of a Bach suite. It starts with a prelude, it has an allemande, a gavotte, and so on. And I have subtitled this The Graveyard Suite. So, in line with my fascination with things that are creepy, ever since I was a little kid, I've always been drawn to the cemetery. My grandparents lived across the street from the local cemetery where I grew up, and we would just go play over there. Like, my cousin and I we'd go to grandma's house, but then we'd be in the cemetery. I just find them to be very peaceful, serene places. I think they're gorgeous. I just enjoy being in cemeteries, and I love seeing all the different cemeteries. And my wife is the same way. So like when we travel, we always check out the local cemeteries, and so I've got a lot of cemeteries that are my favorites. My favorite cemetery I've ever been to would be Rose Hill Cemetery in Macon, Georgia. I went there, it was in 2007. I went to go see Duane Allman's grave, and man, that cemetery is just amazing. But this suite focuses on cemeteries that are around my home state of Utah. So each movement is kind of representing a certain place, some of my favorite headstones and so forth. I'm going to describe each one and then play it to you one at a time. So, I'm going to press pause. I'm going to refill this glass of iced tea, and then I suggest you do so as well. And then let's take a walk through the cemetery together. Oh, by the way, I called it the Graveyard Suite. Even though these places aren't graveyards, they're cemeteries. But you know what? The cemetery suite just doesn't sound cool. So I called it a Graveyard Suite. So please don't email me telling me the difference between a graveyard and a cemetery. Get out of here with that. Oh, and the sheet music for this suite is for sale. So if you come out of the other side alive and you enjoyed the piece and would like to play it yourself, and you would like to support the podcast, go to www.classicalguitarcomposers.com, click on the sheet music link, and it will take you to where you can purchase my sheet music. I don't know if it's going to be there right away, so I just published it. It takes like 1 to 2 days to go up. So if it isn't there yet, just go ahead and click again. But I put this at a low price, a very affordable $5, and you can support the podcast this way and get a little something in return. And the American Suite is also there for sale. All right, let's get our iced teas, grab a flashlight, and maybe a warm jacket or even a blanket, and let's meet right back here at the gates, and we are going to go on a little walk together through the cemetery. All right, here we are. Now, every journey through the cemetery should begin at the gates. So that is where we are, standing at the cemetery gates. And approaching these gates, we hear a haunting little melody as the prelude begins. And we step up to the gate as we walk through into the cemetery. We begin to hear that melody coming from a few different voices, as if the ghosts have joined in fugue to welcome us or warn us of what lies ahead. Now inside the graveyard, our first stop will be at a monument. This monument is found in the Provo City Cemetery in Provo, Utah. And I think this is one of the most beautiful little pieces of writing I've ever heard. This monument is there to mark the memory of the individuals who died while patients at the Utah State Hospital between 1885 and 1960. And on the back of this monument are written these words: "In honor of the forgotten men, women, and children whose courageous and lonely battle with mental illness was never recognized in life. Their struggles came in an era when hope for recovery was never spoken. Death undoubtedly brought them freedom from their mortal pain. So be it our duty to remedy the tragedy of their forgotten lives and remember them as individuals pursuing their dreams while seeking a life of happiness and joy amidst the darkness of their trials. That we never repeat the past, their voices would admonish us to acknowledge those with mental illness today and bring a message of hope, peace, and acceptance." I don't know who wrote that, but it's absolutely wonderful. And then behind that are 3 or 4 stones. I don't remember how many, but they have the names of all these people. And there was one name the first time I saw this that stood out to me. And this isn't a person I know or anything like that. It just stood out to me. And the name was Edward Cooper. This Allemande is for Edward Cooper. Our next stop takes place at the Ogden City Cemetery in Ogden, Utah. If you go to the northwest corner of the cemetery, one of the most heartbreaking and yet beautiful monuments is there. Some people might find it revolting, some might find it chilling and creepy, some might find it sad, some might find it beautiful. Maybe it's all these things. I just noticed there was a statue while I was there, and I wanted to go see what it was. And laying on top of a stone is carved a sleeping child, and on that stone it says, "Babyland. Of such is the kingdom of heaven." And then you look around this monument, and it is surrounded by countless stones, all belonging to infants. This waltz is called Babyland. As a kid, when I would be running around the cemetery, I had a lot of stones that I loved, but the ones that I was most drawn to were the big, tall monoliths staggered throughout the graveyard. They looked like giant chess pieces, waiting to see the next move of their opponent. They stand tall like guardians of the graveyard, and at night they pose an ominous presence for anyone who dares enter. This gavotte is titled The Monoliths. Our next stop at the graveyard is represented by a Lares movement. In my hometown of Spanish Fork, Utah, the Spanish Fork Cemetery holds a very famous grave, amongst the locals anyway. It's known amongst the locals as the Weeping Widow. Although this grave was actually not made for a widow, it is a beautiful statue of a woman weeping. And the legend has it that if you walk around her grave 3 times at night, you'll be able to hear her weeping. The cemetery is forbidden at night, so this can be best tried at the twilight, just before dark. I did this many times as a kid, but I will not tell you if I did or did not hear the weeping. Our final stop in our graveyard suite is represented by a finale rather than the traditional jig, because this headstone cannot be represented by a dance. In the Salt Lake City Cemetery, there lies one of my personal favorite gravestones that I have ever seen. I've visited it many times. It's fascinating. It's sad. It's frightening. And it's just bizarre, and it just makes you wonder why. But in the Salt Lake City Cemetery, there's a very unimposing small headstone. It looks a lot like many of the other stones. It's a reddish marble. It's one that lies flat on its back. And it belongs to a woman named Lily E. Gray. Nothing strange so far. What makes this grave strange is the inscription below her name. It's drawn speculation. It's drawn curious teenagers into the cemetery at night. It's drawn people with more sinister intentions, and those who just plain have to see it, because everyone who knows about it has to see it for themselves. The inscription reads, Lily E. Gray, victim of the beast, 666. This finale conveys the many emotions that come to me when I see this stone. Fear, awe, sadness, fascination, it's all here. Go ahead and take a look. And if you survive your encounter, meet me back at the gate. I'll be waiting. And there it is, Suite number 2 in E minor, the Graveyard Suite, by yours truly. Thank you for indulging me. I hope you enjoyed this Halloween episode. I tried to have some fun with it, but in all seriousness, I love cemeteries. I love these places, and it was a lot of fun to write a suite dedicated to them. And I may do it again sometime with different monuments. Anyway. That Lily E. Gray grave, that is a real thing. I have been to it many times, and there is a recent, I think it was written in October of 2018, so like a year ago, an article. I don't remember who the author is, but I'm sure you can find it on the internet. They did some pretty extensive research on that grave and kind of uncovered the story there, and it's neat to know what really happened, but I've always enjoyed the fun of wondering. Anyway, the Salt Lake City Cemetery is, I believe, the biggest city-run cemetery in the United States. If you ever get a chance, you're here, go see it. If you like cemeteries. If you don't like cemeteries, don't go there. That's a pretty scary place. Thank you for joining me, as always. And remember that the Classical Guitar Composers Podcast is a podcast for you, where we can hear your music. All you have to do is send an MP3 recording of your music for classical guitar to chris@classicalguitarcomposers.com. Send it to me, and the next episode will be all yours, and you can take us on whatever journey you have created. Until then, my friends, I say goodbye. I hope you're able to sleep tonight. And I will see you next time. Until then, keep on plucking.